Hello, and welcome to the Working Lunch, the Slow Chambers weekly series where we have the chance to sit down with leaders in our community and give us all the chance to maintain some of that personal connection that's been difficult to come by this year. I'm Jim D'Antona, President and CEO of the Slow Chamber, and today you'll get to be a part of my conversation with the Executive Director of the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, Joel Peterson. The Alliance, which is a cooperative of Paso Robles wineries, vineyards, and related businesses, works to market, promote, and advocate for the region as a whole. Joel came to lead the organization in 2019 after a career in the LA entertainment industry, working with companies such as MTV, Miramax, and Crusader Entertainment. When he decided to move to the Central Coast permanently, Joel also made the switch to the wine industry, serving as a director of communications for Hope Family Wines, and then as a marketing specialist with Solterra Strategies. A highly engaged community member, Joel has served 5 years on the City of Paso Robles Planning Commission, 8 years on the Paso Robles Joint Unified School District, and believe me, that is the Lord's work, and remains active with the annual Paderewski Festival. Joel was one of the first people I connected with when I started at the Chamber, and I always enjoy our conversations. But today we're going to go beyond wine recommendations and talk a little bit more about his family history in Paso, how COVID, fires, and drought have shaped the wine industry, and some of the great work he and his team are doing. Joel, thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Jim. Pleasure to be on with you today.
Well, so let's just quick start. First and foremost, as it is our normal question, is where are you zooming in from today?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's right here in my office in downtown Paso Robles. Most of the team's working remotely these days, so I've got 2 teenage daughters, so I try and get out of the house so they can do school distance learning, and I come into the office and crank away pretty much 8 to 5, 8 to 6 every day and get lots done. So I'm here in the office in 15th and Spring, Paso Robles.
That's awesome. And yeah, you save a little of that home bandwidth for some schoolwork.
Exactly.
So I'd love to start off with a little bit about your kind of family history in the North County. Obviously, I'm a new kid on the block. I didn't know all of this, but I understand there's a school that's named after your grandma.
Yeah, no, it's a cool story. So my grandma and grandpa moved here in 1940 from actually South Dakota, actually. And they were here until both of their deaths in the last 20 years. But my grandfather was a banker for the Bank of Italy, and then eventually became the Bank of America. And his first home here in Paso Robles was on the 3rd floor of the building down on the corner of Park and 12th Street. And until my grandma made it out a few months later. And she was an educator here in Paso Robles for almost all of her career. She was a teacher, she was a principal. And she worked so long and so hard for the Paso Robles folks here that they named a school after her in 1990. It's called the Virginia Peterson Elementary School. And that's pretty cool. So, and she founded the Paso Robles Historical Society along with some people like Norma Moy and things like that. So she's did a lot of things here in the region, and certainly, an honor to kind of carry on her legacy of giving back to the community.
Well, it's so amazing. And clearly, obviously, that has translated down in the genetics or the culture of the family. So how have those roots kind of helped shape your view of your community and kind of what it means to take care of one another up there?
Yeah, good question. My grandma was a huge influence on me, and we were very close. And I just spent a lot of time with her, and a lot of my memories was spending, I didn't grow up in Paso Robles, but I spent summers in Paso Robles. So a lot of my memories were of hanging out here and getting drugged along to, teachers functions and retired, Eastern Star functions and historical society meetings and all kinds of things like that. So just giving back was a huge part of her. And she was so passionate about Paso Robles and the potential in the future. And this is, 30 years ago when it was still just kind of a small little town and gaining recognition. But she loved the town, and she always gave back so much to it. So it just meant a lot. When my wife and I decided to move here back in 2002, we just, we really wanted to give back to the community. And it's just been a big part of, I think we live in a small town when you can see and you can affect change. You want to be a part of that. That's a cool thing. I mean, we had lived in Los Angeles before that, so it's a little bit harder. I mean, you did that when you were there in LA, but it's a little bit harder to kind of make your inroads there. So I think in a small town like Paso Robles, it was a little easier for me to get involved. And within being here for a few years, I was appointed to the Planning Commission. Later, I ran for school board and did some things like that. So it's been good.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, you're exactly right. Right. The difference between, making an impact in this community versus those others in Southern California, it's definitely feels much better and get you involved. But it sounds like you're getting a chance to maybe take a little well-deserved break from the school board. Do you
Yeah.
think that was a good experience that you might do something again in the future?
I don't know. It was being on a school board, like you said, God's work. I don't. It was a long 8 years. Let's put it that way. Most of the gray hairs on my head are from. I think that it, it was incredibly rewarding, I should say. I mean, serving on a local school board, you learn so much. I mean, I think the first couple of years is really a learning curve, and you're learning a new language and how school budgets work, how school funding works, how decisions are made. But we're so blessed in this county to have really good schools and good leaders and things like that. And we ran into some issues here and some challenges that came, and we've gotten through most of those. But I still think I'm really proud of the education our children are getting. I've got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. I ran to really make sure that students' needs were put first and decisions were put first. And I think we did a good job for the most part on those things. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of hard into tough decision making. But I think at the end of the day, I'm proud of it. I definitely want to take a break and not be. I want to focus on my career here at the Wine Alliance, and at some point maybe I'll run for something else. But I'm really feeling like the time to be on my career and my family right now after those 8 years.
Oh, for sure. Again, for folks who aren't aware, doing what you do every day for a school board, again, it's not for the $1 million salary. I know that. It's for the you're trying to do the best for the kids, but man, people are obviously very protective of their education and how education goes, and to be a decision maker on it, I'm always thankful for those who put themselves out there, but especially those who put themselves on a school board.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, well, let's start talking about a little bit. What sparked your interest in working at the Alliance, and kind of you talked about the rewarding parts of being in public service, but what's the rewarding parts of kind of in this role?
So it's funny, when I moved here in 2000, I moved up here in Harvest of 2001, right after 9/11 actually, and I wanted to work for a winery. I convinced the winemaker at the time of Justin Vineyards to hire me as a non-paid intern. I was like, and he was like, no, you don't want to, that's too much hard work. And I was just a 20-something-year-old who was in their wine club. And I convinced him to let me to work Harvest, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with, I knew I loved the town already. I was sleeping in the spare bedroom of my grandma's house, and I loved it. I got up every morning at 5 a.m., drove out to Chimney Rock Road to Justin, and I worked across, and it was a bug. I worked for Justin and Debbie Baldwin, and back when it was a small, tiny winery, and I knew I wanted to live here. I went back to LA, did one more movie I worked on, and then I came back and we moved here in 2003, and it was just, I wanted to be involved in the wine industry. I knew it was going places. The potential was there, and I wanted to have kind of my foot in the ground floor there. And I did a couple of things. I was able to work a harvest for Stefan Say over at L'Aventure, which was just kind of my unbelievable experience to work with someone like that of his pedigree and the wines he made. I was able to work for a few weeks actually in the cellar over at Everly with Gary Everly and that team. And then I got a really cool offer to go work for Triana and Hope Family Wines. And that was there for a long time. I learned a lot. I was 8.5 years. I learned so much about launching brands, and that was cool because that's a national brand. We were in 50 states almost in 5 countries, and we launched a brand called Troublemaker, which we started with a few thousand cases, and now it's just this awesome thing you see everywhere. So it was cool. I learned a lot in those 8 years, but I always saw the work that the association did. At that point, they had a leader named Stacy Jacob, who now is here, still in town, and she does a lot of good work. And I was just always impressed with the work she was doing of really putting Paso on the map. And I thought, that'd be a cool job at some point in my life. And sure enough, 17 years later, I applied, and I've been here for a couple of years. So.
That's so awesome. And yeah, Stacy is an amazing advocate, both from the county-wide, really doing some great work. So you got to be a part of with some great people and some great wines and what experience. That's fabulous.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So for folks who might not be familiar what a Paso Wine Alliance does, do you have like a 30-second elevator pitch to let folks know kind of what's your specialty? What do you guys deliver?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always call ourselves, we're the official trade and marketing organization of the Paso Robles wine region. Our goal and mission is to promote and protect the Paso Robles AVA. And so that involves, doing public relations outreach, media relations outreach, consumer outreach, events, and really advocacy for our members. So we've got about almost 500 members in our association. So about 200 wineries, almost 100 growers, about 75 hospitality partners. That's hotels and that's restaurants and, tour companies. And then the rest are associates. And that's everyone from, people who are selling bottles and barrels to lenders to graphic artists and things like that. So we really have the wineries who are our backbone and really, really here to support the wineries and, especially on a marketing front, but also the support business and making sure people are networking and meeting each other and kind of connecting people so we can still make the Paso Robles ecosystem really strong.
So, as most folks know, I'm kind of a wine geek. But when you think of the Paso brand, is the Wine Alliance made up of just the top 5 wineries, or do you guys have huge wineries and tiny wineries? What makes up that Paso brand?
We're all of the above. That's the cool thing is we've got the big boys like J. Lore and Justin and Dow, the people who are out there in the wholesale market. They're international. They make an incredible amount of wine on a high quality level. We've got those guys in the association. We've got the small guys like Torin and Clos Solène and Nell and Cordon and just these brands that are just doing anywhere from 500 to 2,000 cases and things like that. So it's really a cross section. And the cool thing about that is that's not only made up in our membership, that's made up in our leadership as well. So our board chair right now is Tyler Russell, and he's the winemaker owner of a small brand called Nell Cordon, and they make a couple thousand cases, right? My vice chair is Molly Scott, who's vice president of vineyard operations for Justin, in this massive multinational company. And then in between there, we've got Jason Haas from Toblis Creek and Josh Beckett from Peachy Canyon. So medium-sized people in there. And then we also on our board have hospitality and associate members. So we've got a banker on there, and we've got Faith Wells who does communications and works for FedEx as well. So we've got just a nice cross section of across the board. So when we were out there pitching to wineries saying what we do, we can actually talk about whether you're a smaller brand, a medium-sized brand, or a larger brand, and we hopefully fit the needs of all those things.
Yeah, it sounds like the idea obviously is here's a group of folks that have gotten together to make sure everyone succeeds, which kind of feels like this community in general, but that sounds like an awesome connecting point to make sure everybody's participating so that, the rising tide lifts all the boats there.
Yeah, it's certainly like the mantra. It's been here a long time, and it started with the pioneers of the region. And when I say pioneers, I'm talking about people like Gary Eberly and Doug Beckett and Tobin James and Niels Utzon and those guys who 40 years ago said we need to the Paso Robles became an AVA in 1883, and then they created that association like within a couple of years of that, and it's really been the mantra from then until now. When you've got new people who are coming in, they're still talking about Paso Robles first and their brand second, and I don't know how unique that is because I haven't worked in Napa and Sonoma, but I certainly know it's unique to our region because that's just the mantra. I mean, when everyone has done it for 30 or 40 years, and you're going out there on the road talking about your brand, you're also talking about your neighbor's brand and who you're buying fruit from and who's helping you. So it's a really cool thing because it's competition, but it's really like camaraderie more than anything.
Well, I guess that goes a little bit towards kind of the overall, if you're talking about that, if winemakers are talking about that. So what do you hope people think about like when they hear Paso Robles wine? Yeah.
The first thing is you kind of hope they have a starting point or like an entry point to what that is, whether that's a bottle of wine they had at dinner one night, or they went to their friend's house, or maybe they ordered it at a restaurant. But when they come here, it's really about that approachability and that small town charm you have here in Paso Robles. And I think the interesting thing is that really fits our personality. If you've come here and you've walked around the downtown park, or you've gone out to the wineries, there's this really friendly approachability to Paso Robles, especially in the wine industry. And they have that attitude that like, come on in, whether you know a lot about wine or nothing about wine, we're going to teach you, and we're going to just have you here and taste with you, and let's explore it together. And the other thing about Paso Robles wine, which is super unique, I think, is the diversity of what we have. And we grow over 60 different varietals here. We've got unbelievable Cabernet. I mean, over about 49 to 50% of the grapes all grown in Paso is Cabernet. And beyond that, we've got Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, all the Rhone varietals. We've got Zinfandel, our heritage grape. We've got Carignan. I mean, just stuff that's been growing here for a long time, since back when Paderewski was planting stuff. And then you've also got, I think we're known for a little bit for that smaller boutique, brands that kind of people think it's their own, like they kind of feel ownership of it. But also like, I mean, Seven Oaks Cab from J. Lore can be found in almost every store in America as far as that. So we've got the reach of those quality brands that are, say $15 to $25. But then you've got some high-end brands that are just making unbelievable wines as well, that are making their way into top wine cellars around, but also just like top wine lists around the country.
Well, and it's an extremely interesting AVA. As you know, I down here in the slow side, you know, it's a very cool climate. There aren't real deep hot spots, but up in yours, I mean, you can go all the way from the west side of Paso to the east side of Paso, and the temperature change got to be crazy. So the type of grape that you can grow in there is pretty significantly different, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we've back about 8-9 years ago, we've now split up, and there's 11 different sub AVAs in Paso Robles. And so you've got the small ones like Adelaida and Willow Creek, and on the east side, you've got Highlands and Australia. And so there is that big diversity. The diurnal swing is another thing we talk about, is that huge thing, the fact that there's always that 50-degree swing. And not only in the winter, not only in the summertime when it goes from, you know, 110 to 60 or 100 to 50, but even in the winter, I mean, the other day it was like, you know, 25 degrees or 26 degrees the other morning. And then it was, you know, almost 80 degrees. So that we get that diurnal swing throughout the year. And not only do I like it because you can, like, you know, enjoy an outside lunch, like today I can go outside and have lunch somewhere, but then also at night it's going to cool down. But during the growing season, it allows the grapes to kind of cool down, you know, and shut down at night and kind of recover from that heat. And then the next morning it heats up and they can make those great complex flavors. So it's a cool part. The other funny thing about that is we actually, one of our trade slogans we use with SOMs and with wine buyers is Paso Robles, it's cooler than you think. And so there's kind of a double entendre there. Like, obviously we think we're cool at Paso Robles, but it's actually, it's everyone thinks it's like so incredibly hot and it's always 110 degrees, like, you know, in Fresno or Bakersfield. But no, it cools down. And if you sit in the afternoon in the Templeton Gap or Adelaida or Willow Creek in the afternoon on a summer day, it gets cold. I mean, you've been to the Mid-State Fair or Vina Robles Amphitheater in the summer. It is cold. It's not like chilly. It's like you need to bring a jacket. So that allows those grapes to really make those incredible flavors, which obviously has put us on the map, and, you know, hopefully for a long, long time.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it really is crazy because, yeah, they're literally points, and it's I love that message because you literally at 12 or 1 o'clock ready to melt. Yeah. And then by the time 6 o'clock rolls around, you're like, what just happened? Where am I? How did it get this cool? Yeah. But it's great to sit outside with that kind of temperature swing. You don't end up with like a Las Vegas where it's 115 at noon and 113 at midnight, right? So you're like still roasting.
Have that swing, which helps. It's fun.
Yeah, that makes it very cool. Well, I mean, you talked about, you know, it's so great to be going outside, sit and grab a bottle of wine, but obviously today or yesterday was a big kind of shock for all of us in terms of not necessarily that we saw this rise in COVID cases, but maybe the extent to which some of these things may roll back. But, you know, thinking of COVID in general, I know when we talked back in March, it was, you know, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? There's been this big swing. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what's been the kind of biggest impact on COVID wineries, positive or negative?
Yeah, there's been a bunch. I mean, I would equate yesterday's news from the governor almost like a curveball. I mean, we knew the pitch was coming. And I think we probably thought it was going to be like, you know, a fastball or maybe a knuckleball, but it was a curveball. And, you know, being lumped in with Southern California is a challenge because we know our cases, even though they might be high from what they have been, they're still relatively low. 1 person in ICU, relatively, you know, few deaths compared to the other parts of the state. But being lumped in with that is a curveball because it effectively means once they make that decision, whether it be today or tomorrow, we've got, you know, limited time before we do close down. And especially because we think that for the most part, wineries who are serving wine outside, which they all are right now, is a pretty safe, you know, risk-free place. I mean, it's, you know, people wearing masks, they're touchless experiences, they're outside. So it's a challenge, but we've seen a lot of creativity. I'm sure the word of your guys' organization, and Seems Mine, is pivoting and seeing what we not only do we have to pivot to strictly an all virtual, you know, type thing and digital marketing and kind of canceling events and making sure we're working to get consumers to understand the Paso Robles brand. But what wineries have really done is effectively done that through their computer screens and through their email systems and through their tablets and phones. So it's basically, how does the winemaker or the winery come to that person? And so it's if it's shipping wines, shipping tasting kits, and then having that one-on-one experience with the winery, the winemaker, the wine owner, things like that. So I think we've been a lot of that virtual touch points, which I think that's here to stay, as you can probably attest to in your organization. But at the same time, I think it really made people in general, wineries in Paso have been very blessed because there's just been a steady stream of people coming to their tasting rooms over the last, say, whatever, 3, 5, 7 years. And when that stopped in March, April, May, they realized how they had to get their online systems, their POS systems, and their marketing systems up to speed. So if they can't be here, how can they still get those wines sold? And luckily, for the most part, they did a really nice job. Some of them in particular just have hit it out of the park in terms of just making a seamless experience. So what they're seeing on social media is what they're seeing on the website, is what they're seeing in their email marketing. And it was just, they were able to really just do some really good sales numbers. It's been impressive. I mean, for the most part, if we work with a company called Community Benchmark, and they benchmark our sales and our visitation numbers versus other areas in California. And Paso Robles has by far really seen the lion's share of some of that success, because unfortunately Napa and Sonoma got hit with some pretty tough fire events. We didn't have that. We had some fire events to the north and south of us. They didn't affect our visitation numbers too much. The extreme heat hit us a little bit, but still our numbers have been pretty good in terms of still getting that visitation from Southern California, Northern California, and the people who just want to order online. So knock on wood, somewhere we've been in a pretty good spot despite these just horrific situations in terms of like pandemic and deaths and cases and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, in general, it seems that the wine industry certainly would not have wished for this to be how things happen, but it does seem they've, whether it's the appointment schedule, whether it's creating a better kind of electronic connection to folks, thinking about these online kind of virtual tastings. Yeah. They've really done some great work. And I would assume a lot of what they used to do was kind of sell to restaurants, and that kind of went away. And so have they kind of replaced at least some of that or most of that with kind of that that personal?
Yeah, it's almost a case-by-case basis, but you could say in generally speaking, yes. I mean, the on-premise business is basically gone. I mean, most of the on-premise is gone in terms of like people, selling to restaurants. There's still some of that going on because the restaurants are still serving, but it's certainly way less than it has been. The people who had a really good presence in off-premise wholesale, like box stores like Bevmo, Total Wine, Costco, they're still doing pretty well because the sales are actually up quite a bit in terms of alcohol sales. Not shocking, but then they have pivoted to the direct to consumer, and that's worked for the most part for people. And then the one thing you did hit upon, which I failed to mention, was that reservation system. And we had a few wineries who were doing a reservation system. Maybe 5 to 10% of our wineries were reservation only. And right now we're at, over 75% of our wineries are reservation only. And it helps really the consumer feel safer about when they're going to go there, but it also helps the winery because it can know how to staff, where to put people. And so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because that was the knock on Napa, right? Sonoma is like, oh, I got to make a reservation. It's $50, it's expensive, and I got to make sure I'm there. But at the same time, it adds a little bit of order and semblance to what we're doing here. So I like the fact that now people are calling me and saying, I can't get into any wineries. Can you call some friends? Or I want to get in here. And so it's hard because people are coming here. I got a call this morning from a lady who was driving up from Riverside, and she wanted me to make reservations for it, all the wineries she could, because it's like she couldn't find anywhere to get in. So it's a good problem, but at the same time, we know that the shutdown's coming in for the next 3 weeks, and that's going to be tough because it's going to be then, hopefully people doing online orders and shipping and things like that. So.
Well, and it's such a great point. Again, it's, I've done both, right? I was back when 20 years ago when it was like drive up, tastings are free. You never knew what you were going to get. 90 people there, 2 people there. It was weird. But having tried the appointment setup, what an incredible experience it is to just know you're set up, you're ready to go. That's fabulous. So
and what you're seeing is almost to almost everyone I'm talking to at the wineries is they're really selling more wine at those situations too. So you make your reservation, you've got a 60 or 90-minute slot to go and taste wine. You get a more of a one-on-one or a more personalized experience with that person. And then you're going to probably be more invested to buy, instead of 2 bottles, maybe you're going to buy 4, maybe buy, instead of 3, you're going to buy 6, or you're going to buy a couple bottles and join the wine club. So what you're seeing is the wineries be able to put their best foot forward, which then leads to future sales. And that's a huge part of what the way wineries operate is their wine club. So, a huge part of it is, that revenue is anywhere from, 40 to 60% of their revenue every year comes just from wine club members. So it's massively important that even if they sold 1 bottle of wine to that person, but if they join the wine club, they know they've got, 2.5 to 3.5 years of that person buying wine from them.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also incredible to help drive folks to some really, like you said, some real kind of boutique wines.
Yeah.
Maybe you've never even heard of before. Maybe you knew of Halter and
Yeah.
Tor, these others. But
Yeah.
since you can't get in, you're going to try Brecken, or you're going to
Right.
go try some
Right.
of these others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You must spend a lot of time up here in Paso. You know all the gems up here.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll be calling you later. I need a reservation. Just kidding. So you talked a little bit about in there about the crisis that happened certainly in Northern California with the fires. We've had all sorts of challenges here. Has that done anything for, the coalitions or the wine industry in general in terms of breaking them apart or creating competition or working together?
That's been one of the wins in my book is out of this kind of unfortunate situation of COVID and the fires is that there's a group of us who are all executive directors from all the winery associations. And so that includes, Kathleen down in San Luis Obispo, to Allison in Santa Barbara, Kim in Monterey, Napa, Sonoma, Lake County, Temecula. So there's about 20 of us who have official, regional winery associations. And we talk every Wednesday. And it's funny because it started with COVID and how do we deal with this regulations and how do we do, and then we've got Wine Institute who hops on the call, and COG, which is the California Association of Wine Growers. And we jokingly refer to it as our therapy group, because there's 20 of us who are dealing with hundreds of wineries, who are wringing their hands of what do we do next. So it's really made us close and tight. And I've been able to build really strong relationships with regional winery associations throughout California, because we all get throw in these different curveballs at different times. And so they have different timing. They say, oh, this is how I do it. Or, hey, this is the wording. How did you word this? And so we really have become quite collaborative. And I think I see that happening, that trend continuing in the future, so we can rely on each other. We're going to be doing our first virtual wine auction next year, which I'm super excited about. We've never done like a virtual wine auction, but I know that San Luis has had success doing that. I know Sonoma has. So I've already had phone calls with those people, and they're super open about, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. So it's already helped me kind of create some programming for next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the silver linings we pulled out of the kind of, even from the chamber organization. The Central Coast Coalition, going from like North Santa Barbara County up to Paso and San Miguel, we kind of kept in touch. But man, when COVID came, we've been bonded together in trying to figure out, help all of our businesses. So I'm glad to hear that all of that, I think hopefully people are realizing it's California versus the world, right? Oregon's trying to do more, Washington's trying to do more.
It is. And we love those guys, but we gotta watch out for our own. So it's like, I'm not saying don't buy French wine, but I'm saying buy Paso wine first.
Exactly. No, that's perfect. Yeah. So it just kind of, I can't believe we're already at like a half hour in the conversation here. So just want to kind of get a couple more, just quick personal questions that we always kind of end on. Is there something you've learned, in the past few months that you think will stick with you in the future?
Yeah, it's just I've always appreciated personal touch and personal connection with people, and I think that's the biggest thing that we're all missing, right? Is that kind of seeing people on a day-to-day basis, and I don't want to take it for granted. I love the fact that we can connect over coffee or lunch and things like that. So I think I'm going to appreciate that so much more when we can get together and have those. I'm still going to use Zoom and do all these virtual things, but I think having that personal touch, because for a membership organization, I'm really close with a lot of the wineries, and I was only about a year into my tenure before this happened. So there's still some wineries owners who I haven't even had a chance to meet in person. I've talked to them on the phone. So it's like, I can't wait until I can actually get out there and, walk the vineyard with them or try their wine in their cellar. Because that bums me out that less than a year into my tenure, this thing hits us all, right? So I'm looking forward to those. And then just like being kind is so important. Like, I just think people get, they get angry and they get upset and they get frustrated, and we've all gotten there. But I just think if you approach everything from an empathetic point of view and being kind to people, that's where you need to start almost everything with. And I learned that obviously through my school board, interactions with parents and teachers and kids, is you've got to start at a point where it's like, let's try to understand each other on some same footing. We might disagree at the end of the day or throughout that. Let's really just be kind to each other. And I think that we need that, certainly coming out of the tough political, atmosphere that we've been in with the election, and whether it be local politics or national politics. So I think you've got to be kind to people. I think that we were put on earth to do very few things as a universal species, and one of them is to love each other. So I just think that's a huge part of what we need to do, is to start there and then let's work through the problems and find solutions.
Wow, that is a great answer. I appreciate that. Everything you just said, that's really great. Well, so if folks are interested in exploring the Paso wine region, what's the best way to connect to the Paso Wine Alliance, find some of that information with you guys?
Yeah. So pasowine.com is our website. It's a big, robust site, both on the front end and the back end, because all the vintners all use it from the back end and put in their hours and their photos and everything. But we have it as a consumer-facing website. So pasowine.com, you can look at all the wineries we have in there. We have about almost 90% of the wineries in Paso are members of our association, and so you can find them. You can see when they're open, when they're closed, what they grow, what their tasting room looks like. Obviously, when we go back to having events, all those events are on there. You can also find us at Paso Wine on Instagram channel and Paso Wine on Facebook, doing those quite a bit. And we just do lots of really fun things. We do fun videos on there. So basically the website's the way it's the place to start. But if not, if you Google Paso Wine, it's, pasowine.com. And that's where there's tons of just great. I've got a great team here. I've got a marketing manager who does an amazing job on the social media side. We've got a trade and PR relations, communications director who's been doing this for 14 years. So it's like having a second hand here. And membership director was Emily Renault, who used to be the Slow Chamber over in Atascadero. Carol is my right hand here. And then we've got government affairs and some good people who work here to prop me up.
Yeah, and you guys are doing amazing work. And again, if you're interested, you guys should definitely check out the social media feed. It's a lot of fun and gives you some great information of things you may have not known or seen to connect with. So, well, final question we always ask, love to know from you. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, it changed from when you first asked me that. So this weekend, I'm going to go support. I'm going to actually go out and do a little bit of wine tasting, and I'm going to eat a few meals out because I think it's going to be a tough month for our restaurant. So I'm actually going to, safely and responsibly go have a few meals in downtown Paso and support the people who are probably going to be shuttered for the next few weeks. So spend some dollars with those guys. Let them know that we're here to support them, and I think it's going to be nice and sunny as well. So just enjoy some of that sun here in Paso Robles.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to do the same thing. Get out, get some restaurants in, definitely get some wineries in, and support our local businesses.
I already put my tree up and my lights up, so I got to get out of the house.
Yeah, spending enough time in front of a screen anyways. That's fabulous. Yeah. So, Joel, thank you so much for being with us today, spending a little quality time. It's so interesting to hear how all of this works. It's such a big industry with so much behind it. I love the way you broke it down for all of us. So really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the work you do, Jim, and your association. It's great to have you here in our county, and you've done an awesome job in your own right. So your leadership and your communication are awesome. So anytime, happy to help.
Joel, thank you so much again. So for all of you out there, thank you so much for eating lunch with us. We hope to see you next week when we're joined by the recently appointed 3rd District Supervisor, Dawn Ortiz-Legg, to discuss her new role, her impressive background, and hopes for the future of our county. If you have an idea for a future working lunch guest or someone you want to learn more about, send us an email at slowchamber@slowchamber.org. We appreciate all of you tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend.